Oh,
I think it's
okay.
no.
Yeah, it's recording now. I don't know how this, but hey, this is it.
This is the first
So
ever MSNS podcast.
yeah, first ever MSNS podcast. No name, no anything. Just two guys.
Guys struggling in nursing. Okay, no, but yes. For all of you who are, hopefully watching, my name is Ryan Lim. I'm a sophomore too.
And I'm Toby Lin. I'm currently a senior too.
Okay, I just want to start off like before we talk about everything that's going on like right now. I just want to know more about you, Toby. Like let's like run it back like 4 or 5 years back to senior year of high school. You struggling doing all your college applications. What made you choose nursing?
Um, Honestly, nursing for me was chosen pretty much on a whim. I initially thought I was going to go into pharmacy,
Uh,
and I was actually volunteering in a pharmacy, my local pharmacy, during that summer, prior to the fall of senior year when college apps were really, happening. And initially I thought, this is going to be it. I'm going to do pharmacy. Like I love chemistry. It took 3 years. This is the career for me. But the more I volunteered in the pharmacy, I realized, there's got to be something more. I don't want my interaction with people just to be, hey, here's your medication. How are you doing? Checking on you. But it felt really limited
yeah.
in what the capacity was in that. Not that pharmacists aren't important, but for me, I felt like my calling was for something else. There's a different capacity that I can help. And it just so happened that one of my good friends at the time, was also looking into nursing. And then the gears started turning. And as a kid, I was always sick, so I was always in the hospital. And I started thinking back to that experience of how the nurses really made an impact on me. Thinking of, I want to work in healthcare. I think healthcare is so important, but in what way can I give myself the most? What capacity? And that's where nursing kind of came to light for me.
And like in terms of, I don't know how much you want to get into detail about like why you were in the hospital like so many times when you were
Oh
younger.
yeah,
Was it
yeah,
like general sickness, or was there like a specific condition that you would like be
yeah.
able to be talking about?
So the first time I was really hospitalized was for Kawasaki disease, when I was about two. I was about 2 years old when that happened. I was hospitalized, for a brief amount of time, but everything was okay. I had got the treatment, and they monitored me. But for the years after that, because of the effect that it had on my heart, I wasn't the most athletic kid growing up. I didn't have a lot of stamina.
Uh,
When we ran laps in PE, I was almost always the slowest one. I was the smallest one, but I wasn't. You look at me, you don't think that I would be the slowest person in the class,
yeah.
right? You think, oh, tiny kid, he can probably run really fast. But no, I was one of the slower people. I couldn't handle physical activity that well. Whenever I got sick, the cold, the flu, it would always happen for weeks and months on end. So that sometimes would land me in the hospital just because of how bad it got. And then I fractured my arm in the sixth grade playing basketball. This is when I had gotten a little bit better, health wise. But then you know thinking back to how that happened, and then I actually skipped over a part. What really solidified my quote unquote hospital experience was when I got diagnosed with lymphoma in the fourth grade,
Oh,
and the experience of numerous ER visits of just trying to figure out, because it took a while for us to really figure out the diagnosis, because when a kid shows up with just a stomach ache,
uh-huh.
I think, you know, it's, your tummy hurts, it's just a stomach ache,
Yeah.
gastric reflux, whatever, not a big deal. But, over multiple times, my mom, who was my biggest advocate, she kept pushing, there's something more. You gotta keep looking. It's not normal. I was having all of these weird symptoms, blood in my stool, etc.
Yeah.
And so when they finally found it, then got transferred to a different facility, immediately scheduled a surgery. They did the biopsy, found out, oh hey, this is benign, but it is cancer. We need to put you through some chemo just to make sure that there's nothing there. And during that hospitalization was when I met probably, she's probably the reason that I'm where I am now.
Mm,
The nurse who took care of me when I was at regional hospital,
yeah.
um, before and after the surgery. And she was a really young nurse. I'm pretty sure she was probably a new grad, but the way that she cared for me, whenever she was in the room, it was like I wasn't in a hospital.
Mm,
She had pretty much, like, the way that she cared for me is kind of what I've modeled my approach to nursing around, which is when you're in the room, if you're able to make your patient forget about everything, it's no longer their diagnosis, and you're able to touch them on that level, connect just as people, as humans, and really see them as a person. Like, that's the goal. If you can get to do that for even just one person over the course of your career, like,
mm.
I think you've made it.
And I think that's like one thing that I'm like starting to learn and like develop.
Hmm.
Because initially, like I think in senior year of high school, when I first like chose nursing, I was like, oh, this is what I want to be doing for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Even like I feel like I was just like back then I was just so young and like I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Because when I first thought of nursing, I had experience because like just like you, well, not in like as like to that extent, but I was in the hospital somewhat
Hmm.
often because I did have a heart condition called
Yeah.
Wilson White.
Yeah.
So I've been to the hospital a couple of times for like procedures where they would go up like my femoral artery, try to fix what was happening with my heart.
Hmm.
And I think through there, that was my introduction to healthcare, medical care, into nursing. And I
Yeah.
think because of that, when my mom started dropping hints of me like, oh, maybe you should become a doctor or like a nurse or a pharmacist, I think for some reason, I think when she said nurse, something like in my mind just like got triggered. I was like, huh, maybe. So I started looking into it. But I think when I first started out, I was only thinking about like the physical realm of nursing and like, oh, you're gonna do injections, catheter,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that. I think as I'm progressing, like in the nursing program right now, you really start to think about or like learn about the emotional realm and like the mental realm that comes with nursing. That goes beyond just like, oh, here's a couple medications. I'm gonna take your vital signs, this and that. There's a lot
Yeah.
more like there's a lot more like emotional connection that goes in nursing that promotes the healing beyond just like the typical procedures and surgeries.
Yeah. And it's all about layers, right? Like, with nursing, people like to say, you put on so many different hats, right? You're the family member, you're the support, the respiratory therapist at times, the physical therapist, the nursing assistant. You have so many different roles that you perform. In nursing itself even is a role. But then I think the thing that I've really realized, over time, and especially in these past few weeks, that nursing really, it's not a profession, it's not a job, it's not something you go and do, but really is how you carry yourself. Nursing is really a lifestyle. It's how you approach the way you live, how
Yeah.
you talk to people, how you approach people. um just because you walk into the room as a nurse with the patient, and you're listening to them, active listening, really trying to hear what they're trying to say,
Mhm.
you're also doing that in your daily life. It changes how you approach all different things, when and at the same time, it's also a check. You can't really, it's hard to go into the hospital in the role of a nurse and then come out and be the total opposite,
Yeah.
being mean and stuff. But then at the same time, we're not perfect,
Mhm.
right? And so when we are out here and when we are not perfect, when we have those moments of imperfection, it's kind of like a check of, hey, I'm better than this. I can be better, do better. And even when it's in the hospital too, when you have those moments where you maybe weren't the nicest to a patient because they said something that triggered you, and it's not about the patient, it's about you. And so you really get to do a lot of this thinking of, and really molding to become a better person, and always striving for that. And so, you know, at its core, the thing I realize is nursing is really about being human.
Yes. Oh, 100%.
And like that's the core. Like it, and like to figure that out. And when you think about it, and every aspect of nursing, when you look at it and you just think to be a nurse is to be human, it like it changes the game. Like that's it right there. Like when you have that, when you know, whether you get called in for a double or, you know, shifts in a row, you know, nurses right now are working so hard to during this time with everyone getting sick, the shortages and everything. But when you can think of it as to be a nurse is to be human,
Mhm.
it's no longer, man, that it's so tiring. Like that patient in that room, like they're so mean. Because when you think of it as being human, you know, it's not about how they're treating you. It's how can you help others? How can you treat others, regardless of how they're treating you?
Yeah. That's such a mature and like optimistic mindset. Do you like did you always have this, or how like what was like how like
No.
run me through your mind in terms of like how your view of like the philosophy of nursing changed like throughout your like every year of like the nursing program.
Yeah, I mean, you know, going back to freshman year, you know, we're just taking our prereqs, we're taking microbiome, physio, anatomy. Like it, I wasn't, you know, the best student coming freshman year. You know, you know, you come out of high school, senior, you think you're a hot shot. You know, you do well in all through grade school, whatever, and you're like, man, I don't, you know, class. You know, I'll skip a few classes. You know, don't study the hardest. Oh, I can just ace this test because you know about that. And and then you know you start thinking, oh man, all these pre classes like you don't, they're not as important or whatever. Like I just want to do nursing, and so you know that's, I feel like that's a place that a lot of people are in,
Yeah.
right? And so you know because that, you know, I'm not developing the best study habits. Even now I'm still working on, you know, improving that.
Yeah.
But once it comes to sophomore year, you know, the first time I you know put on my scrubs, step
Oh,
foot in the hospital at the Jewish home, it's like that's where things changed. You know, realizing like there's more
right
here.
you all.
You're doing this for a greater purpose.
Uh-huh.
You know, all the tests, all the studying. You know, you're not studying to pass that test. You're studying to treat people, to cure people, to heal them. You
So is
know,
it
and
you started clinical? Because I think in freshman year it's kind of, or just like even in senior high school, it's like, oh, you know, I want to do nursing, or I'm interested in nursing. But I feel like for a lot of people, not just us, but just almost like every nursing student, I feel like once it gets to sophomore year, we get the clinicals. That's like it turns from like, oh, I want to be in nursing to, oh, I belong in nursing. You know?
exactly, yeah, and that's like you said it right there. You know, you belong. Like
Mhm.
that sense, that you know, just that moment you get when you first step in, and realizing like this is for me. Like this is like my life. Like I you know, this is for me.
Mhm.
And okay, oh, just a public safety alert for everyone to continue sheltering in place.
Ah, yes.
um,
We can talk.
but
You know?
yeah, we'll talk about that in a bit. But you know, just that sense of belonging, you know, that really hit me. You know, I still remember my first patient saw in Soph 1, you
Ooh.
know, at the Jewish home. And I think that experience, you know, and that's the thing is you meet people over time who really stick with you. And I think that patient the first time, you know, and to be able to sit down and talk to them, get to know them, and to realize that for someone who's in the hospital, the smallest things, as simple as wetting their lips, getting them a cup of water,
Yeah. It means
helping them reach for their phone, just any little thing, you know, matters so much. And you know, from that point on, it's like nursing's not about, oh yeah, I'm gonna give you your injection, here's your shot, here's your medication, you need to do, you know, that's a part of it and that's important. But the most important thing about nursing, like it's not the stuff that we can physically do, it's all about the intangibles, you know. And that only became more prevalent for me over time, you know, when you go to soft 2 with med surge, you know, at St. Mary's, and with this whole time, you know, with amazing professors. And you know now, you know, having Deb
oh my God.
as
The thing is,
your clinical instructor, like she's amazing.
she's amazing. She's like the greatest. Well, like I don't know. Well, she's like the well. So far, I guess I only had two clinical instructors, but she's like been like so amazing because like
Yeah,
she doesn't wait for us to like just sit around and just like kind of go through this flow. It's like no, you're going to like first day, you're going to like pack all these wounds. You're going to insert catheters. She finds things. She goes out of her ways and
yeah,
annoys all the nurses to
yeah,
like find something for us to do, which I love.
yeah, she goes above and beyond.
Like I was
Yeah.
so comfortable the whole time, but it was like the best experience ever.
Yeah. And you know, that's the thing is like, you know, dating back to now with how abruptly things have changed
Mhm.
to go from those experiences to be able to draw on that and realize, you know, it's really not the end. You know, the I think the number one thing I learned from Soph 1 from my instructor, Professor O'Shaughnessy, you know, it's really communication and listening, you know, being open no matter how tough it might be. And you know, I had patients, people, you know, and clients, you know, that you walk into the room and they're hostile. You know, they are straight up mean. They're yelling at everybody. They don't want you to get into their room. They don't want to, you know. And but when you really, when you approach them from a different angle, you
Mhm.
know, taking out your ego, taking out all of your negative energy, going in, sitting down and just accepting it, you
Yeah.
know, being present. And then you know, I had that with one patient who they just had a bad night, you know, they didn't sleep well. And then you come in again and they apologize, you know, sorry, that's not me, but you know, it's tough.
Mhm.
And to realize that. And then it was like, hey, you know, through that semester, it's like, I can be a better listener. You know,
Yeah.
I don't, you know, we do a lot of talking at people, you know, a lot of, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, or you're not going to get better. But how about just sitting there and listening? What do they want? You
Mhm.
know, what do they need?
Yeah.
And then you get to soft 2, which I think the number one thing I learned from Deb was just go get it. You know, your experience is short. You have to really make it your own. You have to go and do things. You want it to happen, you have to do it. You know, I missed out on the opportunity to help insert an NG tube,
Uh-huh.
you know, quote unquote missed out. But you know, it's just that was, and then but then afterwards, you know, talking to my nurse, I got to help with the meds, the feeding, and all of that. And it's like my hands were shaking the whole time. We this was week 1 of clinicals. We hadn't learned any of this.
Uh-huh.
Like we only knew, you know, the idea, the theory, and Deb's just standing there like, you got this, go do it. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. What you're, you know, and I felt like my hands were shaking. She said I was fine, but I was like, no, I'm like this the whole time. I'm like, you know, I'm holding the medication, the syringe, and I was like, how am I gonna do this? But you know, she was there. She, you know, was reassuring, and then afterwards, she's, you know, hey, you know, you did a good job. And I was
Mhm.
like, really? But you know, you think back to that, you know, and it's still a moment that you remember forever. You know, all of those weeks, and that's one of the things that sticks out the most because it was just so impactful. You know, I think that moment was truly defining for me at this point, and you know, my career up till now. Because had she not pushed for me to go and just take that moment, you know, in the future, I probably would have missed out on a lot of other things, if not just saying, you know what, I'm here to learn. Whether you pass, fail, whatever, it's not failure if you're learning from it. You know, they're all just opportunities.
And the thing with
um
is, I think we're very fortunate to have Deb to have
yeah.
taught us that kind of lessons. But I think not everyone is that fortunate. So I feel like for anybody who's listening that's like a freshman or coming into sophomore, the
Yep.
thing is like the mindset you want to have coming into clinical is being assertive as possible. Like
Yeah.
obviously you don't want to like push too hard on the nurses, but you want to let them know, hey, I'm very open to administering medications. I want to like be a part of this process in caring for the patient. Because honestly, I think it's not that hard to go. I feel like go throughout nursing school doing absolutely nothing and still surviving nursing school. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, yes, 100%.
So I feel like right from the start, it's important for you to let your instructor and your nurses know that you want to be doing this. Because,
Yes.
but like I understand because I was there too. You know, sophomore 1 nursing student or even sophomore 2 right now. I'm pretty scared. I'm worried about hurting the patient or just failing.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, it's you're under the supervision of your clinical instructor. They're going to be walking through the whole process with you, making sure that not only is the patient safe, but you're safe.
Yep. And the nurses too. You know, you have registered nurses there the whole time. You know, you're never alone in nursing school.
And I think that's also like in terms of being alone or like I think that's one of the best things about direct entry nursing.
Yeah, that's it. It really is a blessing. And that's the thing, you know, when you think of it as an opportunity, when you think of it as I'm so blessed to be here, it shifts your whole perspective, and there are days where I'm like, man, I don't want to do this, like study for a test, read the book, do lectures, like I don't want to, but you do it anyway. You get through it, not because you feel it's short, but because your eye is on, there's something greater that you're trying to strive for, but at the same time checking yourself and realizing, kind of like what Kobe said, the late Kobe Bryant, it's not about the destination, it's really about the journey, all of the things you do along the way, and that adds up. When you look back on all of your experience, you draw from all of that.
And also, just like a question, I know we've been talking about like all the amazing things that come from nursing.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we need to talk a little bit about the nitty gritty. Like, have you experienced burnout yet, or what are your thoughts about like burnout in nursing?
Oh yeah, burnout. Yeah, that's definitely happened. And I think it's really easy for us to forget about that in nursing school. When you look around and it seems like everyone's doing amazing, and no one's talking about the the things that we really don't want to admit. The being tired,
Emotion.
being stressed out, yeah, being depressed, and all of that. It's like going from, for me, it was really going from living, quote unquote, living on campus, my first 2 years, and then moving home for the last two. And just the transition, feeling kind of disconnected from everything else. And I think that's something we really don't talk about enough in nursing, especially with each other, is, how are you feeling? And truly, are you okay? Because when we tend to ask, hey, what's up? How you doing? Everyone's just saying, I'm fine, good, not bad. But do we really hear people say, truly, I'm not okay, or I'm not, I'm not feeling the greatest, I'm tired, I'm stressed out, I'm depressed? We don't talk enough about these things, and it's almost like we're not supposed to talk about it because it's a sign of weakness, or it's a sign that we're not handling it. But in reality, it is tough, it is hard, it's not easy, and that, I think that's something that I definitely wish I understood earlier on, to be able to admit that, hey, maybe I'm not doing as well as I like to put off. Maybe I am struggling, and it's okay to admit that and to seek help, whether it's from your peers or someone else.
But the thing about like burnout is, I think it's such a taboo subject that you describe, but somehow like the word burnout kind of gets thrown around loosely.
Yeah, that
Like,
too.
I've been like that during finals. We're like, oh man, dude, I'm just like so burnt out. But at the same time, I feel like when it comes to true burnout, when it comes to true like emotional exhaustion and like alienation from like the workplace,
Hmm.
that's where like it becomes dangerous, not only for your health but also for like the care of the patient.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what it's about, right?
Do you feel like it's gotten to that point where you've been like to true burnout?
I don't think I can say that. I don't think I've been in a position yet. I've been fortunate to have people in my life who've kept me in check,
Yeah.
and instructors who really imparted, their wisdom, their knowledge, how they've handled being burned out, and how they've been able to manage it. Talking to nurses as well. Um, but there, throughout, I think, looking back, there's definitely been moments where I've held myself back from something because it wouldn't be safe for the patient. I'm not alert enough to be able to do that. Hey, I don't feel that this is safe. Those are such important words that I think we don't appreciate enough. Is this isn't safe, or I don't feel safe, I don't feel comfortable. And it's not a sign of weakness. It's in reality, it really is a sign of strength. You have to be strong to be able to admit that you don't feel, quote unquote, you don't feel up to the task. But it's not that you don't feel up to the task, it's that you recognize in that moment that you are not the best choice at the moment. You're not in the best place to be helping that patient. You can help them in a different way, and maybe that is the one injection for the whole semester. But if you don't feel safe and you're causing harm to the patient,
Yeah.
You know, that's not where you should be.
And
And
I
it's
think that
okay to admit
that
that.
like skill of humility, it's so amazing but so hard to have, where
Yeah.
you're like willing to like put aside your ego and be like, you know what, like I'm not up for this right now. I don't feel safe, and I'm pretty sure the patient will not be safe if I do it. Like it's so important to have that humility to be able to step down and let someone else take that opportunity to do
Yeah.
it.
And it's okay. You know, there've been times where through clinicals, especially in Soft 2, where there's so many opportunities, and you know, when you recognize that one of your classmates hasn't had an opportunity yet, you know, maybe they're the one person who hasn't done an injection all semester, and here you are, you've given like 5.
Yeah.
You know, the next injection you get, hey, you know, I would love to do this, but I know my classmate hasn't had the opportunity. Is it okay, you know, telling your nurse, is it okay if I go grab them so they can have this opportunity too? And you know, at least to my experience, everyone's been really open to that. Yeah, you know, that's awesome. And you want to be supportive of each other, you know, giving each other opportunities. We're all getting through this together. You know, there's a big wound change, and one of my classmates had passed it off to someone else. They said, I've already done a wound dressing change. You know, you go ahead. You haven't had this chance yet. And it's like, that's huge. You know, that changes the game, in that by showing that kindness, you know, by not being selfish, by being humble, recognizing you had your opportunity and sharing that with someone else. Now that person gets to carry that with them for the rest of their life. And they in turn may also share an opportunity with someone else. And it just, you know, when you're kind, when we're kind, it just multiplies.
That bond that you just create with not only your block with, but just like the people in your nursing cohort and your classes,
Yeah.
it's so strong. Like the things we all go through, like the struggle in this nursing school is a struggle, man. It's like the hardest thing. Well, the thing is, like, of course it's hard, but like I think coming in to like nursing program, maybe you might not realize how hard it is. But you know, if you're going to be going into one of the most respected professions in the entire world, you better expect that nursing school is going to kick your ass.
Yeah.
Once you do start feeling that, and then you start realizing how important it is to have a support system
Yeah.
and having a support system around you, not only for them to help you, but for you to help them. It's like the greatest bond that you're ever gonna have.
Yeah.
So
And then, you know, as I think back to just how much things have changed every semester, you
mm,
know, from, and honestly for me, and I think it's important we're talking about this burnout now, is junior one, I think, was my toughest semester of nursing school.
that's
Like
interesting.
all time.
Share
Yeah.
what made
Yeah.
it so hard for you.
Yeah, you know, people, you know, it is a chill, as far as workload, you know, it is a chill semester, but I think mentally, like, that was one of the toughest ones. And it's funny that looking back, like, that for me, I think is the toughest semester, because there was a period in freshman year, you know, first semester, where I actually considered changing my major and like moving schools completely, you know. And you know, luckily I had a good support system to be able to get through that, get to soft one, where it was like, okay, you know, you have that moment of clarity. Okay, this is it for me. And luckily, you know, I'm still here for that. But I think junior one was the biggest mentally for me, because after, you know, coming off of an intense med surg semester, you know, I was like, oh man, I'm ready to go. I want to hop right into med surg too. But all of these things that we're talking about now, you know, admitting when it's not safe, and you know, checking yourself, and how are you feeling, do you feel burned out, all of these things that I didn't have, these tools I didn't have at the time. And so I think that for me was the moment, not necessarily with patients, but just the moment where I experienced that true burnout in that semester. You know, and mental health is something we really don't talk about enough, of how do you feel, you know. And for me, it wasn't something I was able to verbalize. And so when you internalize it for so long,
Yeah.
when it finally comes out, you know, it does break you down. um, and it's funny, because that was also a semester where I had a really good time at my community site at the Santa Clara Senior Center, and I, you know, still talk to the staff there. I was actually just visiting a couple months ago. But you know, I think that for me, and I was so happy that we had that period, for me to be able to recognize these things, what is important in nursing, not just in how you take care of your patients, but also how you take care of yourself.
What do you feel like is some of the ways you do take care of yourself, like outside of nursing? Like, even though nursing is such a huge part of our life, even like in our entire lifestyle, like what are some of the things that you kind of do outside of nursing to help you kind of de-stress and just like cope with everything that you have to go through in nursing school?
Yeah, for me, I think basketball is one of those things, whether it's watching an NBA game,
Uh,
and growing up watching Kobe, and then now watching the next generation, or playing basketball with, friends, classmates, my cousins. My family is a very basketball oriented family. And so, just playing basketball, that is just a great way for me to de-stress, let out whatever frustrations, and leave it out on the court. At the same time, also, just video games, reading, listening to music. Meditation is something that really has kind of climbed to the top of the list, especially with the times being the way they are now.
yeah.
Sitting with yourself and really examining your thoughts, and coming from a Jesuit high school, we did something called the examine a lot. And while that's not something I'm sitting down and doing all the time, I've found a way for me to incorporate it into my life, and at least in nursing, the closest equivalent to that would be what we call debriefing, right? When something happens, you debrief, you talk about it, you assess that situation. How did you feel during that? How do you feel now? What did you do? What would you have liked to do better? At the same time, applying it to yourself in everyday life. How do you feel? What did you do? How can you be better? How can you have done that better? But also, how can you be better as a person?
Mm-hmm.
That's just what works for me on how do I continue to, quote unquote, stay sane with all this craziness. How do you keep yourself, in check?
Yeah, I think it's just, well, like, I think it's just crazy. Like, I think it's like what you were saying, like, first off, about like meditation. I think that's amazing because I think in this day and age where everything's just moving by so fast, everything's so hectic and crazy, we're always worrying about the future.
Yeah.
It's really hard to like sit down, self-reflect, and try to stay grounded and live in the moment when
Yeah.
we're so constantly worried about like, oh my god, these internships, jobs, how am I gonna do for the HESI? Like, as important, like obviously that's like extremely important and should be a priority, but I think there's something about meditating and just being calm or just like in your own mind that's so rewarding and so
Yeah.
beneficial for those tasks that you have to do for nursing.
Yeah. And it's not like I'm walking around, I'm like, oh yeah, just meditating all the time. It's not something that you're doing all the time, but it's just you strive to do it, and I think that's the key thing I've learned is you just do your best, to take care of yourself, to do your schooling, and all of that. That's all anyone can really ask, right? When we're pushing each other and ourselves to always have to perform at this level, it's okay to dip. It's okay to have a bad day, to have a bad test. But what's important is how do you carry yourself from that point forward, recognizing that that's not the end of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, you just need to move on from that. But it's all at the same time also allowing yourself to feel that, feel the disappointment, feel the anger, feel the frustration. When my clinicals first got stopped and I actually got turned away at the door, for that next week, I was pretty much like in bed the whole time. I was, not really doing much because I was so sad from, not having that. But then after allowing, myself to go through that, then it's like, all right, you know what? It stops today. This is, you let yourself be sad. You let those feelings out. Now it's go time. Now let's make something happen. Take advantage of this opportunity to, do something.
I think that's a very important like thing for whoever's listening, especially early on, to just remember that whether it's like a pride thing or like a male thing of just like trying to contain your emotions. Like,
Yeah.
don't do that. Like, you are allowed to feel how you feel. You should never feel guilty about how you're feeling.
Yeah.
Be able to express yourself, whether it's just talking out loud to yourself or just like with your support group.
Yeah.
I think you need that. Venting is so important because once you cut that part of yourself off and let everything like just build up inside, I think not only will you just start becoming a lot more bitter, you might start getting burnout from that, from just cutting yourself off from your emotions.
Yeah.
Because of how emotional nursing can be, man, it's crazy.
Yeah. Truly. Yeah.
I think the ways that I agree on the basketball thing for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like when I played basketball, like before all this happened, before we weren't allowed to go to USF and Correct, I was probably playing basketball maybe 2 or 3 times a week just by myself. I would just like after class, I would just shoot some hoops, either with some friends or just by myself. I think it was just so therapeutic because
Yeah.
when you're in that space, just like dribbling the ball all alone in Correct, you kind of have that space to think about anything and everything. But at the same time, you're so free that you're okay with thinking about absolutely nothing and not having to be anxious about all your classes or your life and family and friends and all that.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I really needed. And I encourage everyone else to have that. So, like, as important as nursing is, try to find something outside of nursing that can bring you that kind of therapeutic, I don't know, therapy, that kind of therapy to your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can de-stress and then be prepared for nursing.
Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be this long period. Like you don't have to sit in the gym for 6 hours. It could even be just 10 minutes to detach and separate from your norm. Like that makes a huge difference. And that's kind of where I started earlier on is, just taking those brief 10 minutes. And then from that, from that small amount of time, you take more and more time until ultimately it just becomes a part of your daily life, when you don't even realize that you're taking out that 10-minute chunk to just think, or do something unrelated to your norm.
But as important as this, I want to also talk about all the stuff that I feel like a lot of the people who come into MSNS want to know about, which is like, what is like the best thing you need to do at USF to make the most out of your time? Like, should I be an EMT? Should I do CNA? Like volunteering? Like, what is your experience on that in nursing school right now? Like,
so I think that with, not even just with nursing school, but just with anything, the thing I've realized is you should be doing what's important to you. So all of us are here going through nursing school because this is important to us. We want to become a nurse, right? This is what we want to do for the rest of our lives, for most of us at least.
Yeah.
If we're, I think the toughest thing coming in was people saying, oh yeah, you need to do this, you need to get that, you need to get this certification, that certification, get this license, that license, because you need to, do all that. But if you think about it, if you're going through EMT school, which, as you know, is not easy, right? If you're going through preparation to become a CNA or to get a specific license or something, doing something else, while it's important and the people who are doing that, good for them, if that's not what you want to be doing, if that's not where you want to be, that's not something that you should be putting your time into. You should be putting your time into the things that are important for you, because ultimately when you get, and this is something that I've gained from talking to plenty of instructors who had previously been managers at different facilities, the most important thing they're looking for is who you are. So if you're trying to be someone that you're not, if you're going through EMT school but you really, that's not right for you, then putting that on your resume, what does that do for you, versus you investing the time you would have invested into that into something that's important for you. If you're really savvy with video, if you're into photography and that's your thing, there's a niche there. You can be help with marketing, with creating educational content for people that can still be related to nursing, but this is in your realm. This is your field and ultimately who you are.
I think that's so important. And then So just like summarize that. So do you feel like like in terms of what it's like for the experience and the volunteering and all that, it's not the type or it's not what you're doing. It's like the passion you have for it and what the lessons you've learned from that to apply to nursing, right?
Yep, it's not what you're doing, but really why you're doing it. And that's the thing is, coming into college, I thought, oh yeah, I'm gonna get my EMT, I'm gonna get my CNA, I'm gonna do this and that and all of these things.
Uh-huh.
You know, ultimately, I never ended up doing any of that.
Uh-huh.
I did get my CNA license a few months ago, but that was because I wanted to. That's because it was important to me. But all of these other things that initially I set out to do, they didn't happen. Why? Because for me, that wasn't at the core of who I was, what the things that really were that I was, truly passionate about.
Yeah.
Is this what I really want? And I think that's been the biggest lesson to me is, initially I saw it as, oh man, I missed out, I'm a failure, I didn't get to do all of these things, looking around at all your classmates, like, oh man, they're EMTs, they're working, they're doing this and that. But it's like that, good for them. But if I were in the same position, would I be enjoying it? And so to not look at it as, oh, I missed out on all of these things that I could have done, but realize that all of the things that happened, they happen for a reason. You were there for a reason, and things that you get to invest in, the things you spend your time on, when you get to talk about them, you get to talk about what they really mean to you. And that's what they're looking for in an interview, is when they ask you about that thing on your resume, are you having it on your resume because you think it looks good? Because when they ask you about it and you can't tell them why that's important to you, or tell them a story about that, then why was it on your resume in the first place?
That's also like, that's not to discourage anyone from not being an EMT or CNA.
No.
It's also like, just because you might not find interest in it like at first, I think it's also important to be open and try everything out to find
Exactly.
what you are passionate about.
Yeah, like try it out. Like I tried to get my CNA license 2 years ago, but at the time, it wasn't the right time for me to get it. I wasn't in the right space and all of that. But ultimately, it's just, do what you want to do because you want to do it, not because someone else is telling you to. Like EMT is an amazing opportunity. CNA is an amazing opportunity. Medical scribe, like all of these different things you can do through nursing school that are related to healthcare, volunteering, or whatever, they are important, but do them because you want to. Do them because you're passionate about it, not because you think it's going to fill your resume.
I think it's also hard to just like find it on your own, because a lot of the things like I didn't even know about a lot of these opportunities. Like I had to be told about these opportunities in order to like find something passionate about them. Like EMT, like even though I knew what an EMT was, I never really thought that was like an option for me like right now. Until like Shane suggested, because I was on that whole kick, like, oh my god, I need to fill my resume, I need to like do all this and that, like probably like freshman too. And then like when Shane suggested it to me, like, oh, go through EMT school. And I think going through EMT school changed my whole perspective about like trying to stack your resume and this and that. Because I found that passion for being an emergency medical technician, like the rush, it was just so amazing. I think it's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like you kind of pause and realize you really don't need to stack your resume. It's not about the quantity. It's really about the quality, not only of what you are doing. And I think I found that quality in emergency medicine. I'm not saying I don't know if I want to pursue emergency medicine yet, but I think I have definitely found that passion right now for emergency medicine because of EMT school.
Yeah. And that's, like you said, that's shaping who you are. You're realizing aspects of yourself that you wouldn't have realized had you not gone through this experience. And, that's that's, I think, the thing that's most important about this is not to say that you shouldn't do it if you're not sure about it, but it's that going through it, you're not doing it because you want to put EMT on your resume, right? Or because you just want to get a job as an EMT. You're doing that because it's a part of who you are. When you bring up EMT, you get to talk about the impact that it's had on you, the lessons that you've learned, how that's changed who you are and how you approach life even.
Yeah.
And that's the key thing, is all the things that you're doing, because your time is so limited through nursing school, right? There's so many things you want to do, and just there's a lot of things that you're not able to do because of your commitments.
Mhm.
So the things that you are really doing, let them be a part of you,
Yeah.
really emphasize the why.
Yeah, I think for anyone who's trying to like struggling to find those internships or what to do, like my advice is find like one or two things that you're truly, truly passionate about and invest in those. Because when people look at your resume, even like that's what I learned from even like the people like coming to USF. Like before I got into USF, I talked to all the people in admissions and all that and asking them what they were looking for. And literally that's what they said. They were like, they don't really care about the quantity. Like we don't care that you did this and this, and like the numbers and all that. They really cared about like a couple of things that you were just truly true invest into. They looked at how many years did you stay in this program and like what did you learn from it, not just because oh you were like the president and the valedictorian and then you were part of this committee volunteering this. It's about the quality. It's so much about the
Yeah.
quality.
It's what can you say about that thing you went and invested in, and what does it say about you? Those two things I think are just so key
Yeah.
to what you do.
And then I feel like we should end it off by like talking about how coronavirus is affecting your capstone, man, and like just in general.
Yeah, I it's definitely crazy, and I'm actually grateful how things ended.
Uh-huh.
So funny enough, this was the first week of March, where um I literally, that Tuesday or that Monday, I was in clinicals.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then Saturday comes, what, five days later,
Uh-huh.
and I get to the door and I get turned away. And they say that due to the coronavirus things evolving and all of that, they're no longer accepting students. And this was the first real change that happened,
Uh-huh.
for me. Just the previous day I was at school, and it's like this was when stuff was starting to get real.
Uh-huh.
Like, wow, holy crap, like this is affecting my capstone. Just how many other people are going to be affected? And then I find out that the same thing happened with the Kaiser clinicals.
Yeah.
And then later on, a few days later, what, come Monday, Tuesday, or whatever, and then we find out USF is going to be moving on to online.
Mm-hmm. So
and
what
then
right
and
now?
then sorry.
What's happening right now with your capstone? Like, is it just online? Like, how does that even like?
Yeah, so now all clinicals have been canceled,
Uh,
and we're all finding alternatives to substitute for hours, the first being, appropriately enough, a COVID-19 training,
okay.
and simulation online through the World Health Organization. And that's worth part of our hours. Our capstone paper is worth part of our hours. And so it's really, at this point, it's just doing what you can, making adjustments, adapting, which really is, a lesson on nursing. Like this is what nursing is about. When stuff happens and you just have to adjust. You can't control all of these things, but what you can control is how you react to
Mhm.
events that happen, unexpected events. And so I'm lucky that I had that extra week, ahead of everyone else getting the shelter in place and being at home and social distancing and all that, because it gave me that extra week to mentally prepare. And then now I'm in a position where I can talk to people who are struggling with it, and it's okay, because I've been there and we can get through it together. That's really been, I think, the message, through all of this. And it's it doesn't have to be this, really dark time, in history or whatever. We're like, as far as we know, school is online for the rest of the semester until further notice. And with all of this time at home, it's time to, if you're living at home with your parents, it's time to spend with your family. It's time to make up for quote unquote lost time, forming new bonds online, finding other projects, learning a hobby, and it really is, what you do during this time is a test to your character. Do you take the time to make something of it? And it, really, in a way, it's a blessing in disguise for those of us who are fortunate enough to be in a position where we get to think, okay, what next? Compared to people who even now are, just struggling to stay afloat, struggling to meet their basic needs, or they're in the hospital, they're sick, or they're trying not to get sick. For those of us who are fortunate enough to where our worry is commencement happening. Like if that's our, concern, we're the lucky ones, and we get to how can we support other people during this time? How do we help each other stay safe and stay sane? How can we do this, not apart, but really together? It's kind of like together but apart.
Together but apart. Agreed. How do you feel about commencement though? Like, because I think I read an email about I think I appreciate that USF is, rather than like making it online, like how I think UCLA is doing, and there's like outrage about that. Like, I think it's really cool that USF is willing to like still hold the commencement, but just postpone it to a later and safer date.
I think that really everything is up in the air now, and I think that just taking it day by day, week by week, is the best thing that we can do. Not panicking. Panic, I think, causes more problems than it solves. Really just accepting, this for the time being is the new normal. Yeah. What can we do now? We have no idea what a week, 2 weeks, a month into the future is going to look like. But what we do know is this is what we're doing now. This is our focus now. Not to say that we're not thinking about the future, but keep that in perspective, keep that in mind. But then, really putting your efforts into, okay, next steps, what things can we do in the meantime that are going to set us up for when things return back to similar to how things were before. Things are never going to be the same, but when things return back to a sense of normalcy more than what we're used to now, can we set ourselves up for success? Can we be successful? Because for a lot of us, especially the seniors, anyone who's listening, the plan is we're graduating in a few months. And the plan after that, in another month after that, is, to take the NCLEX, to graduate, to start working as nurses. How do we prepare ourselves for the moment where we have to step up?
Yes. Don't ever, we need to make sure that none of us are viewing this as like a waste of time.
Yeah.
Although things may be different, I think it's important for us to still stay grounded and make sure we are still in touch with our responsibilities, whether it's with nursing school, family, friends, and just do what we can, adjust, and like learn from what's happening right now. And I think we need to all somehow just be more grateful about the things that we are able to do when this pandemic isn't happening. Like, hopefully things all, return to normal or are similar, like you said. And like you're able to go to the store and do this and that. And like, just be grateful that we do have that opportunity to just go outside and do what we want to do.
And then, just loving each other, loving yourself, loving your friends, your family, and strangers even. This is a tough time, and there's a lot of people who are suffering as a result. And so how can we get through this? Really just humanity, as people, as a world, how can we put, aside our differences and work through things together? And especially as nursing students, entering a field where this is going to be what we're going to see, things like this, maybe not on this scale all the time, but people who are vulnerable, and what is our reaction? How do we deal with it? Are we going to, respond with negativity, or are we going to be that positive, pillar? Are we going to be supporting people?
I think I just find it kind of crazy how it kind of took this pandemic to just like realize the importance of simple things, like like washing your hands. Like, I think I've never seen like washing your hands be emphasized so much when it's something so simple that we should already be doing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also, oh no, sorry, just like off tangent, but like I think I just read this article or something about how China is like one of the first few times they've even actually been able to see their blue skies, and like because like the factories were all shut down, there wasn't as much air pollution. And
Yeah.
I feel like from this like pandemic, all these bad times, you can kind of see the good lessons that we can learn for the future about conservation and just doing things differently.
Yeah.
I was just like,
It's a lesson for sure. What do we do, with the world, stopping,
mhm.
how do we get out of this better? How do we take advantage of this time to work on ourselves, work on each other, and then come out hopefully with a more loving, mindset. Um,
Hopefully this can
yeah,
be
that's
like
what it's
sort of
about.
a mindset thing. Like I think everybody's seeing like this coronavirus as like this pause, but I kind of see this as like a moment. Maybe it's sort of like a meditation thing, like an hour meditation where it's kind of time for self-reflection, not only individually but as like in a holistic sense. Where
Yeah,
moving forward, how can we reset and start changing the world from here?
yeah, definitely.
I think this is a good place to end it.
Yeah, I think this is a good place for this first one. I think moving forward, if people want to send in their questions or comments, if anyone wants to share anything or even hop onto this, that'll we'll have that set up, um, and then go from there.
Okay, all right. I don't even know how to stop the recording. Do you?
Yeah, but thanks Ryan again for really getting this idea rolling, getting this all set up, and this I don't think this will be the last one
Oh,
for a
I
while,
feel
but
like
this
it was
is
great. I thank you, Toby, for like helping me out on this because I was like I didn't really know how this would work out, but I think just like you and me working together on this, like I think this could really be something and help the future of MSNS.
yeah, it's why not, with having, and really, this is about support. How do we support each other, having something to listen to, and to be able to have a platform to share our our struggles, our highs, our lows, and all of that as we get through nursing school and just get through life, really.
Yes. All right.
All right.
Okay. I